Now listen, Tom Brady had an incredible Super Bowl performance last night. 21-29, 3 touchdowns, no turnovers, 201 passing yards. It was an incredible game from Tom Brady. But we can't give Tom Brady all of the credit. We have to give the credit to the coaching staff, Bruce Arians, Brian Leftwich, Todd Bowles for assembling great game plans on the offense side of the football and the defense side of the football. We got to give the defense a lot of credit for slowing down Patrick Mahomes and that Chiefs offense. But what we can learn from Tom Brady with his 7th Lombardi trophy is that Tom Brady, if it hasn't been confirmed already, he is the greatest football player of all time. And nobody really denied that heading into the Super Bowl. We already knew that Tom Brady was the GOAT. But just in case you needed some extra emphasis, Tom Brady is the greatest of all time. If you don't consider Tom Brady the greatest of all time, then, well, my friend, you're just ignorant or you're just a hater. So when you think about Tom Brady, one thing that I have admired about Tom Brady, and the biggest lesson that I've learned from Tom Brady over the years, is that it doesn't matter how successful you become in life, you're always going to have doubters. Tom Brady has been doubted his whole entire career. Going into the Super Bowl, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were a 3-point underdog heading into this game. Okay? And Tom Brady was able to prove the doubters wrong. But not just this Super Bowl was Tom Brady able to prove the doubters wrong. This whole entire season, Tom Brady had to prove critics and doubters wrong. Because remember, when Tom Brady left New England in free agency, he was essentially doubted by the Patriots organization. Bill Belichick didn't feel like Tom Brady was worth being paid the amount that he wanted. And he didn't feel like he needed Tom Brady to continue to be successful. So he basically said, Tom, I love you. We appreciate what you've done for this organization, this franchise, but we're going to let you walk because we feel like we can do better. So Tom Brady enters free agency, and the two teams that have the most interest in Tom Brady in the offseason last year's free agency were the LA Chargers and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, Tom Brady knows that at this point in his career that he can't do it all by himself. He is going to need a lot more help than what he had when he was playing for the Patriots. So he goes to Tampa Bay with one of the best wide receiving corps in the NFL. You got Chris Godwin, you got Mike Evans, you got Rock Gronkowski at tight end, you got Cameron Brate, you got a really good group of halfbacks, and you have Bruce Arians as your coach. So what was the narrative before the season began? Because remember, Tampa Bay and Kansas City was my preseason Super Bowl prediction. Well, everybody agreed that Kansas City was going to make it to the Super Bowl, that they were going to win the AFC. But a lot of people disagreed with my notion that Tampa Bay was going to represent the NFC conference in the Super Bowl. Everybody was saying, JT, you're overrating the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tom Brady's washed up. You saw what he did with New England. He's not the same quarterback. It isn't going to work out in Tampa Bay. Well, I told everybody, I said, watch. See what happens. It's no way you're going to give Tom Brady, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, a great supporting cast around him, with a great group of wide receivers, and a really good head coach in Bruce Arians, and tell me that this whole entire experiment was just going to hit the fan. So week 1, the Tom Brady haters are at an all-time high because remember, week 1, the Saints beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Tom Brady had a really bad performance. So then the more Tom Brady haters come from me, they say, looks like you were wrong about Tom Brady all along. You were overrating the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, ha ha ha. Well, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the middle of the season start to hit their stride. Remember, they blew out the Green Bay Packers. They were in their stride. Then they had some up and down performances. They were really inconsistent, and people were still doubting Tom Brady. Then comes the NFL playoffs. So the NFL playoffs kicks off, and there are still a lot of people who continue to doubt Tom Brady. Remember, doubt has been the signature of Tom Brady's career. Tom Brady has been doubted his whole entire career. Even before he was drafted coming out of the University of Michigan in the 6th round, 199th overall by New England. Even when he was winning Super Bowls, people still doubted Tom Brady. So we entered the playoffs this year. And there are a good amount of people out there who believe that Tampa Bay is going to lose in the wild card round to Washington. People felt like Tom Brady was going to struggle against the Washington football team's defense. Well, what happened? I chose Tom Brady. Tom Brady was being doubted. What did Tom Brady do? Well, he leads the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to a win over Washington in the wild card round. So what is the notion next week heading into the divisional matchup against the New Orleans Saints? Well, Tom Brady is not going to be able to get it done against New Orleans because the Buccaneers have played the Saints twice and the games haven't been close. Well, I chose Tom Brady to win that one. What did Tom Brady do? He proved the doubters wrong once again. Leads Tampa Bay to the NFC Championship game against the Green Bay Packers after defeating the New Orleans Saints. So what is the narrative come the NFC Championship game? Well, Tom Brady wasn't all that great in his last couple of playoff performances this year against Washington and New Orleans. He just did enough to win. Okay, well, against Green Bay, people still doubt Tom Brady. And what happened? I still chose Tom Brady to help his team get to the Super Bowl. So a lot of people were doubting Tom Brady this year all the way up to the Super Bowl. And people still doubted Tom Brady. And what does Tom Brady do? He proves the doubters wrong once again and leads the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to their second Super Bowl in franchise history. Tom Brady has made a career of proving doubters wrong ever since he was drafted by the New England Patriots several years ago, or several decades ago, I should say. And the message that we can all learn from Tom Brady is that your doubters are never going to go away. No matter how successful you get in life, no matter how much money you make, no matter how good of a job you have, no matter how good of a citizen you may become in this life, you're always going to have people that doubt you. I remember growing up in elementary, middle school, high school, I was, African-American kid, didn't come from the richest family, and I was a troubled kid. I was always that kid who was always sitting in the back of the class because the teachers didn't want to deal with me because I was always an issue. I was always disturbing the class. I don't feel like I was a bad kid growing up. I feel like I was misunderstood. But this day and age, you have teachers that nobody really wants to deal with the kid who causes a lot of trouble. So I was always the kid that teachers always felt like I was never really going to live up to my potential. I was always known as being really smart. Teachers always said that about me, but nobody really gave me a chance all that much to succeed in life because everybody felt like I was just going to become another statistic. Everybody felt like I was just going to be another African-American kid who wasn't going to amount to anything because I wasn't going to be able to change my life around. And I was going to end up, either dead or in jail by the age of 18 or 20. And that was kind of narrative about me all throughout elementary, all throughout middle school, all throughout high school. I've always had teachers tag me with this stigma, always doubting me. Like, I remember when I first started high school, right? So I first started high school my freshman year, and I had all intensive classes. Now, I was really disrespected when I looked at my schedule and I saw the fact that I had nothing but intensive classes because I had a 4 in my FCAT. I passed my Algebra 1 math class in 8th grade. So I really didn't understand why I was in those intensive classes. So I went up to my guidance counselor to get my schedule changed. He didn't want to do it. Okay, he didn't have faith in me. He doubted me. He doubted my ability to handle those classes. He said, "Are you sure you're going to be able to handle those classes?" I said, "Yeah." So he says that for me to get my schedule changed, I have to go to the principal and I have to go through him and he has to approve the schedule change. So the principal has faith in me. He has confidence in me. He understands that I'm a troubled kid, but he understands that I like to challenge myself. So I get these honors classes, right? And all of my teachers say this every single year. They said when they first looked at me and they first looked at how I acted and how I talked, they didn't believe that I deserved to be in those classes. Because nobody wants to put a kid like me in honors classes or dual enrollment classes with other kids because they kind of want to separate the kids like me from, the dual enrollment kids because maybe they feel like I could have been a bad influence or whatnot. So teachers doubted me. They didn't think I was all that smart. All they saw was the fact that I had great test scores. But if it wasn't for my great test scores, I never really would have had a chance. So I remember this very year, my freshman year of high school, we had to take something called a mock EOC. Basically, what the mock EOC was is basically the high school version of a midterm exam for biology. Well, I Christmas treated because he said it didn't matter. So if it didn't matter, why would I need to put my all in it? Just so you can know where I'm at? So I Christmas treated biology mock EOC. He looked at the scores, and I had the lowest score out of everybody in the class. And he came up to me and said that, you know, JT didn't do so well. And I said, I didn't try. And he said, you're not going to pass EOC. And I said, how much you want to bet I pass EOC? Because you see, he doubted me, literally. My biology teacher my freshman year came up to me and said that I was not going to pass the class and that I was going to fail the EOC. My biology teacher, right? So we made a deal. I told him that if I passed biology EOC, that he has to give me a passing grade in the class. And on top of that, he has to let me come during the summer and eat pizza and blast music in his classroom. So here we are. The EOC comes around. I take the EOC. It was really easy to me, right? So then the EOC scores come out like a couple of months later. And I had one of the highest scores in the district. I was proficient on pretty much 88% of the topics. And on top of that, I proved them wrong. Then, you know, I emailed him as soon as I got my score and told him, I said, you know, you were wrong. You said that I wasn't going to pass the OC. And guess what he said? He gives you the old cliche, oh, JT, I was just using that to make you better, just to make you strive harder and things like that. All that necessary bull crap. I'm not done. I knew that he didn't believe that I was going to pass that mock EOC. And rightfully so. I didn't study. I didn't put no time in. But one thing about me is that I knew my self-worth. I knew how smart I was. I knew what I was capable of. And that is Tom Brady. Despite being doubted so much in life and so much throughout his NFL career, he knew what he was. He knew what he was capable of. You know what they say, you can only control what you can't control. And that's what Tom Brady did. He couldn't control what other people thought about him. He couldn't control the doubters. Only thing he could do was go on the field and play to the best of his ability. And you look at Tom Brady, all these years, even when he was winning Super Bowls, people were still doubting Tom Brady. Remember 2014, 2015, we have the infamous cliff theory. Remember that? Remember when Matt Kellerman went on First Take and said that Tom Brady is going to fall off the cliff and that Tom Brady is going to slowly decline? Remember that? Well, ever since the infamous cliff theory by Matt Kellerman, Tom Brady has beaten the Atlanta Falcons in the Super Bowl. Well, remember, he was doubted in that Super Bowl as well when pretty much everybody was turning off the TV, assuming that Atlanta had the game in the bag. I remember I went to sleep because I thought the game was over. Then next thing you know, I wake up and Tom Brady's hoisting up the Lombardi Trophy, and I'm watching the highlights of how Atlanta had one of the worst Super Bowl collapses in history. Then what happens after that? Okay, the following year after that, they lose to the Philadelphia Eagles in the Super Bowl. And a lot of people are saying that Tom Brady is declining, that the New England Patriots will never ever make it to the Super Bowl once they lost to Nick Foles and company with the Philadelphia Eagles. So what happens the year after they lose to Philadelphia? People doubt New England. People say that the dynasty is over. And they go and they defeat the LA Rams in the Super Bowl and hold the LA Rams to less than 10 points. So you look at that and you look at, you know, the narrative that people have always had for Tom Brady. The fact that, you know, he is going to decline sooner rather than later. And even then, if you want to go back even further, remember when Tom Brady tore his ACL? People doubted Tom Brady then. People doubted that Tom Brady would be able to be the same quarterback that he was before his ACL injury. He comes back. He wins Comeback Player of the Year. He goes on after that a couple of years later to win a couple more Super Bowls. He's the greatest quarterback of all time. And even then, go back all the way back to draft day. Tom Brady was a 6th round pick. 199th overall. People say he was too skinny. He was too scrawny. He didn't have the body type of an NFL quarterback. He didn't have a great arm. He wasn't athletic. He ran like a, what? 5 point something in a 40-yard dash. One of the slowest 40 times in NFL history. A guy who people doubted before he even had a chance to enter the NFL draft at Michigan. People doubted his ability to become the starting quarterback at Michigan. And what happens, all Tom Brady has done throughout his career is prove doubters wrong. And what we can learn from Tom Brady is that it doesn't matter how low you may be in life or how high and successful you may be in life. You're always going to have doubters. You're always going to have people that doubt you no matter what you do in life. And it's not about, the doubters. It's about what you do to prove the doubters wrong. You can either prove the doubters right or you can prove the doubters wrong. And for a lot of people just don't have the mental fortitude like Tom Brady. You see, let me give you guys a good example. Everybody listens to the media. You have to be really naive to think that these professional athletes don't read their Instagram comments and that they don't listen to what these journalists and analysts are saying on them about, on Fox Sports and ESPN and on the big networks. These athletes have ears. They know what's being said about them. But you have guys like Tom Brady who don't let the criticism get to him. And you have guys like Kevin Durant who can't handle the criticism, who care too much about what other people think about them. Kevin Durant got exposed for having a burner account. So you look at Tom Brady. What you can learn from Tom Brady is that you're always going to have doubters, no matter how successful you are in life or how low that you may be in life. People are always going to doubt you. You can either prove them wrong or you can prove them right. And even when you do, you're still going to have doubters. I mean, Steve Jobs had doubters. Okay. Bill Gates has doubters. Mark Zuckerberg has doubters. Every day there's people saying that Facebook is going to fall off. Every day. And all Mark Zuckerberg does is keep doing him, controlling what he can control, and prove the doubters wrong. And Facebook is still going strong right now, along with Instagram, Twitter, and everything else. So, I mean, you look at Tom Brady. Tom Brady is, probably one of the more motivational figures in America. If you had to write an autobiography about Tom Brady, you probably would tear up at the end, because I've never seen somebody who has been doubted so much and yet been able to consistently prove the doubters wrong time in and time out. So for me, I just really wanted to get that out of my head, because that has really been on my mind for over the last couple of months. Like, I've been thinking about this segment for a very long time, about how often Tom Brady has been doubted throughout his career and how often Tom Brady has proved the haters wrong.